Join us on the Conspiracy Collective as we talk about the mystery of Dyatlov Pass. 9 cross-country skiers stay the night on top of the mountain and never make it home. They abandoned their tent and fled to a nearby forest. They were in such a hurry that they were only partially clothed and cut through the sides of their tent to save time. The temperature outside was minus 15 degrees, and within hours, they were all dead. This is the mystery of Dyatlov Pass. Good evening, everyone. This is the Conspiracy Collective with Jill and Jenna, your 2 favorite conspiracy theorists. And tonight, we want to talk about Dyatlov Pass.
Uh-oh. Spooky music.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the history of the case, first of all. What do you know about the case? Or what's the history? What have they told us? What do we know?
So what we know is that there was this happened in Russia, Dyatlov Pass. There were 9 hiking students, Russian hikers, that were going up into, I guess it was called the Northern Ural Mountains or something like that.
Okay, in 1959.
1959. So long story short, they went hiking, they got lost, and when they were found sometime later, there were some extremely unusual things that had occurred at their campsite.
All right.
And all of them had passed.
Right.
So it got spooky.
Okay, so 6 of them allegedly had died from hypothermia. However, 3 of them had shown signs of physical trauma. One of the victims had a fractured skull. 2 of them had major chest fractures, and the body of one of the group members, both of his eyes are missing. And one of the victims was missing their tongue.
Yes.
Now, the investigation originally into this, they said that it was a compelling nature of force that caused their deaths. Now, there's been numerous theories about their unexplained deaths. It ranges from animal attacks to hypothermia to avalanches to infrasound that induces some sort of panic, military involvement, or a combination of all of those things.
So it should be known that these were extremely experienced hikers. They were used to being out this type of weather. This was not unusual for them.
Right. So
they knew what they were doing and how they were going to get through this.
And a couple weird theories are aliens, snowmen.
Naturally, snowmen. Yeah.
Right. Maybe they had accidentally set up camp on some sort of tribe that was indigenous to that area, and they didn't appreciate that.
Right. So one of the theories is that the indigenous people that lived there were pissed off at them for being there because they're on sacred tribal lands. But they had written off that theory because that native group of people were very peaceful. Okay. So they supposedly didn't put too much.
Okay.
There's always the alien theory because it's cool.
There's the government theory.
The government theory, someone had gone in there and attacked them. But I mean, one of the things is there was a tent that they had sliced from the inside out. So they were trying to get out of the tent, trying to run from the tent. It looks like whatever it was had caught them
off guard.
They were unprepared for the off guard, not prepared. They were running around barefoot.
Okay.
Like you said, they had died of hypothermia. There was, I think, 2 of them that had run from the campsite and were found a little ways away from it, down by a little creek or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Okay. But they had like really, really severe.
They had trauma.
Their chest had been caved in. Head
and
had been
there's
caved
some.
in.
I read something about their noses. Maybe one of them, their nose was taken off.
Yeah.
Now, what about the theory that I read this, that they had ingested maybe some bad mushrooms? Like it was I
mean, yeah, but mushrooms aren't going to cave your head in. Well, that's what I'm thinking. Like, if they had done something like that and they had attacked each other, there would be, proof or evidence that they had gone after each other. But this is like something hit the fan and they scattered and they were running from whatever it was and they were freaked the hell out.
And in that instance, some were caught and then some just had escaped, but they died of hypothermia, maybe in hiding from whatever was going on.
Yeah, so it's there's a couple of bodies, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri, I can't even pronounce the last name, were found about a mile away from the camp. They were surrounding a small fire under a lone pine tree. Both were stripped to their underwear. It looked like someone had climbed the tree to search for something in the distance near this tree. The search party found the bodies of 2 other individuals, and they had perished on their way going back to the camp. So they had scattered, were looking to see what was going on, and then just didn't survive.
Okay.
And the last 4 weren't found until the snow had melted about 2 months later. They're about 75 meters away from that pine tree in a ravine covered in snow. The 4 there were actually suited up, but that no one really knows what had happened to cause all of this stuff. But there was bodies that had severe damage, and there were crushing blows to the torsos and all that stuff.
Okay, so what about something predatory, like something that was stalking them? Now, I did read that their special forces had came in and they couldn't find any other sort of tracks around these.
So they didn't.
What does that mean?
So nothing points to your standard things, like if they had died of weather, inclement with the weather, died of hypothermia or whatever. Nothing would have caused that. Wouldn't have caused them to freak out the way they did. If something had attacked them, there would be proof or remnants of that attack, other than the mutilated bodies. If it was special forces or something attacking, hikers in college, what did they stumble upon if that's the case, and how did they cover their tracks? If it was indigenous people, then no one ever talked about it. If a tribe had attacked them, they would have said, yeah, we did this because you shouldn't be here. All the normal theories don't really hold water because there's no proof in it. It's just all of a sudden these people freaked out and ended up dead, but it was really brutal. They didn't leave any tracks.
And I was just looking, and it said that the fatal injuries on the 3 bodies that succumbed to their death through that could not have been caused by another human being because the force of the blows were way too strong and no soft tissue had been damaged.
Yeah, that's another thing, is the soft tissue. So how do you crush a body without destroying the other tissue? So then you look at, was there, I don't know, like a bomb or something? I believe once they talked about some sort of bomb or explosion going off or whatever, but there would be, you would see that on the outside of the body. There would be fire and heat and radiation and who knows what. I mean, you wouldn't crush the skeleton of a human being without doing damage to the outside.
Okay. And it also says that the victims had died 6 to 8 hours after their last meal was ingested, and that they had left on their own accord on foot. So no one had, drugged them out of there, anything like that. Like you had said earlier, they literally climbed their way out of that tent.
So I pictured they had dinner, they hung out, they did whatever they were going to do. They're probably sleeping a few hours into the night now, maybe 3 to 5 hours, and something happens. They freak out. They cut their way out of the tent. They probably hear something. Some of them run off without getting dressed, just take off. Maybe some were already dressed and ran off in another direction. One of them, a couple of them found the tree and they're trying to look back to see what happened, and they say, come to the weather. And others were chased down and attacked and were seriously injured.
All right. So let's put that to the side for a second. Now, as far as the one who had his eyeballs removed, their nose was taken off, that type of thing. What do you think about the theory that those things were removed by, birds or wolves or things like that? Like those things were just, plucked out and eaten, not necessarily having anything to do with the attack itself.
That's a possibility. I mean, if they're laying face up and you have a
tongue and things like that, right?
Right. I mean, that's soft tissue. That's what they're going to go for first. So that's plausible. Those types of injuries could have occurred after the fact.
Okay.
Most definitely. If I don't know, like a wolf or anything like that, they're just going to start.
So, but birds, okay.
But a bird would be a little bit more picky, perhaps. But I mean, how often do you hear about birds picking out eyes?
I have no idea.
What I mean? One, it's just not a common. You don't really hear about it, So, I mean, is it possible? Yes. Is it plausible? Maybe. I don't know. But then you look at other things like, when you have, let's go back to the UFO theory, where you have cattle mutilations, and they go and they pluck out the eyeballs and the tongues, and they'll basically core the animal out, remove all the blood, and drop it back on the ground. Like, how is this happening? How does this occur? Where are they getting the precision to do this? And then let's say you apply this theory to the Dyatlov Pass, and was it this is what they're learning how to do. Maybe they haven't gotten their practices down just right, and they mutilate these kids for no reason. I mean, it's a stretch. It's a huge stretch. But I mean, who knows? But they were freaked out, whatever it was, and it was something. Whatever this was something to put a lot of fear into them and send them out into the weather. Just they scattered.
Okay.
It's
So
a tricky one.
there was a 12-year-old who had attended like a funeral of the 5 hikers, and he recalled that the skin of the hikers that remained were a deep brown. He said was a deep brown tan color. Now, another group of hikers south of that incident reported that they had seen strange orange spheres in the sky to the north on the night of that incident. And I guess similar spheres were observed adjacent to the area that continued from February until March. And that's been by various independent witnesses, including, by the way, the meteorology service and the military. They are not notated in the initial investigation in 1959. However, years later, independent witnesses have come forward and said they have also seen those same strange orange spherical lights in the sky.
So if people are seeing these orbs, a lot of those orbs are attributed to UFOs or another species or who knows what, alternative life form, EVE. If that's the case, if there are these orbs and it was something that had attacked them of another dimension or what, I mean, who knows what happened? That would be even more frightening than it being a wild animal. But you got to wonder, why are they seeing these orbs?
But would it scare them enough
Why did the other crew get attacked?
Leave their tent like that? I don't think so either.
Not an orb. I don't.
All right, so let's talk about this. I have this other theory. Have you ever heard of infrasound? All right, so
yes.
When you have infrasound, it can create a vortex of wind. And in the swirl of that vortex wind, it can create dizziness, panic, dread, nausea, confusion. Okay? So their tent was in the middle of this, which it's documented. It's called the Kármán vortex. And the wind is blowing around the mountain peak and it creates this vortex, right? And it could have created the infrasound below the range of human hearing, so they couldn't hear it. And the tent could have been in the middle of that vortex's path. So you have full force infrasound coming at you, and now you've got panic, dread, confusion, nausea, whatever, and it makes them all crazy. So they think something's coming for them, because remember, there's no other tracks around them. Right. And they in their mind think something is coming, so they panic and they disperse, and then they just succumb to the elements. However, maybe in the confusion and the panic and the dread, a couple of them who maybe the ones that had gotten out farther, they had just succumbed to the elements, but the ones that were clustered together, they turned on each other.
It could definitely mess
Especially
with you.
because the thing that keeps coming back into my mind is the fact that there's no other tracks anywhere else.
Yeah, that's what has.
So what if this whole
everybody.
thing was just this high wind vortex that was created within that little peak that they accidentally set their campsite up in, having no idea that that was what was coming, and then this is what happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to understand natural phenomenon like that, and it's hard to pin it down because people get caught up in the whole mystery of it, and science oftentimes gets cast off to the side. But I mean, they shut the pass down for 3 years after that, so nobody, may not have accounted that. But then it is also the perfect storm. All these things have to be in concert with each other for this to occur. So, I mean, were they drinking? Did the vortex impact them? Were they hallucinating in any form? Were they succumbing to altitude sickness or anything like that? So, I mean, it is one mystery that I don't know that anybody will be able to solve anytime soon, because there's no concrete evidence that points to anything.
They have,
but there are a lot of possibilities.
They just, about a year ago, reopened the case to see what they could determine on what happened, and they still have nothing.
I mean, it's so far removed. All the evidence is, it's just such a cold case, I guess you could say, that it would be difficult to get answers, especially when you have no witnesses. I think that's the biggest thing. There's no witnesses.
Now,
you have people on the other side of the hill that saw lights, but
Now, on this infrasound theory, there is some documentation on it, and it does say that the traumatic injuries suffered by 3 of the victims were a result of them stumbling over the ledge of the ravine in the darkness and landing on the rocks at the bottom. Due to the distress caused by the wind that passes over the top of the mountains, that causes physical discomfort and mental distress to hikers. So they were driven to leave their tent by whatever means necessary, fled down the slope, and by the time they were further down the hill, they would have been out of the infrasound's path and could have tried to regain composure, but because it was so dark, they were unable to return to their shelter. And then because it was so dark, they stumbled over the ledge of the ravine, and that's what caused those specific injuries to those 3 hikers. And apparently that infrasound, it also is capable of inducing panic attacks in humans.
Yeah, panic attack would definitely send people running.
Right.
Potentially.
I don't know if we're ever going to know. They reopened this case. They still are coming to the conclusion that it was a natural phenomenon. So I don't know if we're ever really going to know what happened.
That's a tough one.
However, there hasn't been anything like it since that we've heard of.
That's a good point. So, I mean, if this infrasound wasn't.
Well, and just on a side note, sometimes I've also heard that when you're in a hypothermic state, there's something called a paradoxal undressing, where you remove your clothes in response because you're feeling like you're burning hot, but it's actually you're freezing to death. So when you catch sometimes people who are undressed and they're in a frozen situation and they come out naked or in less layers, it's because they perceive that they are, that they're burning, but you're burning because you're so cold.
Right. Again, whatever this was,
Yeah.
It was the perfect storm. There could have been any number of things, like you talked, that the sound, maybe they did see orbs, maybe their orbs were there, maybe that in conjunction with the infrasound, potentially they were experiencing hypothermia, maybe they were drinking, and like I said,
now,
if
I also
it was a perfect
saw
storm,
something about their stove was not working, that there was a stove malfunction, and if that's the case, that there's some sort of methylamine or some sort of chemical that could be.
It's tough, man. It's really tough. I mean, yes, I that is a possibility. If there's chemicals in there that got into their into respiratory, messed with their head. Totally. I would agree.
Well, it's one for the book. I don't know if we're ever really going to know what happened.
If there's all these,
and I I'm not sure what really is going on with that. I don't know if we're ever really going to know.
Well, I think it's a fascinating story. I think just looking at it, it's one for the books that no one's really going to be able to figure out, because again, if there's all these different contributing factors, I mean, how are you going to put them all back together? But yeah, it's a really fascinating and frightening story.
Not in Russia and not in the snow. I need a cabin. Yes, thank you. All right, you guys, let us know what you guys think about this case, and we will talk to you guys again soon.